Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Unhealthy Podcast. I'm your host, Uncle Marv, where we talk about all the things that are supposedly healthy in our life, but yet we have the unhealthy habits that go with it and try to fix it, don't talk about it, and do all those things. Well, this show is where we try to fix all of those things, whether it's health, habits, relationships, work, and we do it one conversation at a time, one day at a time. And this is actually going to be part 2 of my conversation with Sherry Shaban. And we were talking about her role as an anti-diet health and life coach. And we are going to continue with that. Sherry, welcome back.
Thank you so much. Happy to be back.
Well, so Sherry, first thing I want to do is I want to say thank you for being so open and sharing your story in part 1. I don't think that was our intent, but the fact that you answered some of those questions, I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I think something that would be great for our listeners is to, you know, as we recap your story, you had a back injury at age 16. You dove into, partying and, not paying attention to life. And then you said, I gotta fix this. Then you got into fitness, really into fitness. And then you had a shift to, I guess having a healthy relationship with food, which now leads you to what you're doing today. We talked a little bit about your shift, but let's talk about the fact that people are listening, people are hearing your story, and they're like, man, I wish I could do that. You work with people all the time. What are some of the things that you tell people to help them understand you too can make that change?
So good. I don't know that I've ever really been asked this question this way. Um, I'm going to start off with undoing all the things that we learn in diet culture. And one of the first things that we need to do is take away all the rules and really coming to a place where food is now neutral to us. And what we're doing is instead of watching what an app is telling us to eat or how much to eat, is we're watching how our body is responding to food. Because when we go on these diets and, we're seeing these before and after photos of other people, all we do is compare ourselves with other people. And it might be very similar, someone having heard my story in our last conversation and saying, well, how can I do that? And the way that we can do that is really to come back to ourselves, come back to what is right for me. There's no one diet that fixes it. There's no one magic pill. There is only what works for me now, and how can I be flexible and adaptable so that it does actually become part of my real life instead of it just being this thing that I have to do because other people told me to do it or because that's what you're just supposed to do.
Okay. So let me ask this because I hear what you're saying, and I think that a lot of people struggle with the fact of, last time we talked about we know what to do, we just don't do it.
Right.
Part of that, eh, from what I'm seeing, is that, yeah, we know what to do, but that's not what we see. You mentioned, looking at people seeing the before and after picture, but there's also the fact of what we see on TV. Let's just say, for instance, the Food TV network,
Right.
where we are taught to love food, and, food has to be rich, food has to be flavorful. And, we have to have this relationship with food that is just, we love every bit of it, regardless of how healthy it is,
Right.
or regardless of whether it's right for us or anything. That's kind of what we're told. You mentioned influencers where, you know, hi, I'm having dinner today. Here's my dish. Click,
You're
click.
right.
We have this tendency to want to be like what we see. So
Mhm.
how do you separate that out in terms of, you know, it's not just, you can't make food neutral from that, can you?
No, and then I also want to say that how do you know what's actually going on in that influencer's world, right? How do we know they're not struggling with food? How do we know that this video that they took, it wasn't their fifth take, like, you commented earlier? We don't know that. We don't know what's actually going on in a person's day. So that's the first thing. And I do agree with being influenced in the right environment. And one of the strongest ways for us to be influenced is to put ourselves in an environment where it is relatable to us. So, if, for example, I have a particular diagnosis and my doctors gave me a diagnosis and I want to overcome this diagnosis, what I will do is I will put myself in an environment where there are people who've done it, who've had this thing that I have and who have been able to manage it and overcome it. And so it's very much the same way when we are thinking about our nourishment. And, I'm turning 46 on Monday. And I'll tell you, Marv, I'm not on social media a lot, but the people that I tend to follow on social media are people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There's even a 90-year-old woman who's doing pull-ups that I'm following. And these are the people that I follow because I actually want to see what's possible for me instead of comparing myself to something unrelatable and unachievable, and not in just what I'm looking at, but also the lifestyle, because that's a very, very big part of it too, is asking yourself, and we had this conversation last time when we spoke, was about counting macros and like how stressful that is. So if I don't want to see myself counting macros long term, or I don't want this to be a part of my lifestyle, then it makes no sense to start it, for example. So really putting ourselves in an environment of like-minded people, relatable, realistic, achievable, and something that really resonates with you instead of making you feel like you're not enough, you're not doing enough, you're not going to be as good as this person, or it's impossible to achieve that thing, is really, really important when we're looking at mindset of change.
I just had a thought. So who knows where this rabbit's going to go?
Let's go.
You talked about, looking at people older, as a kind of a blueprint to say, I want to be doing that when I'm their age. Do you know if there's ever been a study that has looked at these people that are, big in the fitness or health industry to see if any of them really lasted to 80 and 90 and still doing pull-ups and stuff? Part of me thinks that the people that we have seen on TV, whether it's, and I'm just going to throw out names and somebody can sue me later, Jack LaLanne in The Juicer,
Mhm,
and I don't even know how old he was, 70s, I think, and then he died.
mhm,
But there were some of those that we see them, they're telling us this is the way, and then they die young.
mhm.
But do you know, I mean, if there's ever been a study to see like those people that are actually killing it at older ages, most of them I don't ever think were on TV or big on social media or anything like that. They're just living a healthy life.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, outside of, the Blue Zones documentary or really following somebody for so long, I wouldn't really be able to recall one person specifically. I think we can look at celebrities and certain people that we've seen on TV for a while and just be able to see that they're still into their self-care routines. But you know what I actually find way more inspiring, Mark? Is that story of that woman at, 54 years old, menopausal, and yet she's still completely transformed her life. To me, that's such an inspiring story because we're also taught that once we get to a certain age, it's too late. And, for women, it's like, oh, once you have children, that's it. Things don't go back. Or once you hit menopause, it's over, downhill from there. So this is like actually things that we hear when we're young. And then, of course, once we are at that age and we're hanging out now with all the moms and we're having our kids, it's something that it's just supposed to be accepted. Like that's just
Right.
what you look forward to. So I find those stories particularly inspiring because they're doing the things that people said you're not supposed to be able to do at that age.
Right.
And it's really never too late.
Okay. And by the way, I always discount celebrities because if I were rich and had money, I could do all the things.
Right. Get the chef and the
Right.
trainer and all those stuff.
Yeah. Somebody show up at my house at 6 a.m. and help me work out, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Let me do a quick switch here because a lot of what you talked about is us, rebuilding our relationship with how we see food and listening to our bodies and stuff. What are some harmful messages that get in the way from the fitness and health industry? Because I mean, you were in it, you said. You were counting the macros and doing all the stuff. I'm not saying that those were wrong, but you did say, you know, there's no one diet that fixes everything. So what is the mixed messaging that we're getting wrong?
I think the harm is any message that creates fear, right? So, um, carbs are really bad and you're not supposed to eat carbs and you're going to end up with this and that or meat is really bad and it raises this and that and there's impotence and all these things so anything that we hear that we notice is charged with fear, those are the types of things that we stay away from, right? Because it's not the chocolate chip cookie that is going to harm you. It's actually how you feel about eating the chocolate chip cookie that is going to harm you. And so moving away from fear, charging our food with fear, giving it so much meaning and really making food either evil or good is what actually becomes harmful. So if you're listening to a diet or you're trying to follow a diet and you're feeling guilty all the time, or there's these really strict rules about completely eliminating food groups because they're so terrible for us, I will just ask you to back up a couple of steps and then using just logic and rationale, think about how we've evolved as humans on this planet. There are certain areas on the planet where only plants were accessible as food. There are areas on the planet where only meat was accessible. But there's not this one way to eat. We actually evolved eating from the land. We were eating what was available to us. So the more we move into the space of demonizing food, creating a lot of fear around that, that's actually where the harm lies.
Very interesting. What are Well, you already mentioned the things that's fear. I was gonna try to associate those with red flags. The
Mhm.
last time we talked, you mentioned something about, knowing if you're hungry, and I know that there was a recent episode where you talked about knowing the difference between whether you're mind hungry or body hungry.
Mhm.
I didn't finish listening to the episode, so I
Great.
apologize. I'm
Give
gonna
us an opportunity to chat.
I'm gonna ask you the question now. How
Mhm.
do you tell the difference, and how do you learn to, I guess, fix it if it's
Mhm.
wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll actually start off with just the language that you even just used a moment ago, more of like fix it if it's wrong, right? So even those words are very, very charged. And if I
Okay.
keep saying things like, "Oh, I'm messed up. I keep screwing up. I need to fix this. Like, what's wrong with me?" That triggers my nervous system into fight, flight, or freeze. We spoke about that in our last conversation. But instead, what we want to do is just listen to all the cues. So before we even change anything, before we even intervene, let's start to notice when my body's asking me to eat. So there's actual hunger or body hunger, and our body will start to give cues, physical cues, when there's actual real hunger. So we will feel these sensations once we have been fasting for a certain period of time. I'm using the word fasting, but I don't mean it in that diet sense that we hear. What I
Okay.
mean it is we haven't eaten in several hours. So if we've gone 4, 5, 6 hours without a meal, we may start to notice that our stomach will start to rumble. We start to think about food, and we most likely crave something savory. And we're pretty open minded. So sure, tacos sound great. Yeah, okay, salmon, that sounds great. Spaghetti, no, but how about, maybe sushi, right? So we're more open to different types of food. And there's a physical sensation in our stomach. It's onset because of many, many hours of not eating. And then you notice that the longer you go without eating, that sensation gets louder and louder and louder in the body. So there's this gradual growth of that sensation. So that's actual real hunger.
Hmm.
Now, mind hunger, on the other hand, mind hunger is oftentimes very much reactive. So it is reactive to a situation or reactive to an emotion. It could also onset even though you just ate 30 minutes ago. So when there is a dysregulated emotion or an uncomfortable emotion, so you might feel lonely or bored, or maybe you're sad, or maybe you're stressed. So something triggered it. It was reactive. Second of all, it's very urgent. It's immediate. Like, I need to have this thing now. It is also very specific. I need to have chocolate chip cookies now. I need ice cream now. Like, the only thing I need right now is like this very specific food. No, nothing else will do. It's got to be this thing. And it's very much emotionally involved. So there's a lot of mental fixation on it. There's a lot of food obsession, and there is a sense of urgency to have this very, very specific thing. And oftentimes that specific thing is going to give you instant energy. So we're talking about refined sugars or very high amounts of fat. Like, the body's is searching for a bigger bang for the buck.
Gotcha.
Have you noticed that in you, Marv? Like, as I shared this, are you able to tell the different times where you're experiencing mind hunger versus body hunger?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't trying to say this in the right way in case my wife is listening. So,
Well, I'm going to tell her anyway. So,
okay, all right. So there are times where I'm thinking, I'm not hungry, I don't need to eat now. But
right.
because we've been so conditioned to eat at certain times, I just do.
Hmm.
And then maybe a couple hours later, I'm like, oh, now I'm hungry and I want to eat something. So I've noticed that I'm like, okay, you had talked about the fact that, why are we eating a couple hours after we just ate? So I had already started thinking in my mind, like, okay, obviously I shouldn't be hungry a couple of hours after eating. So I'm eating probably either something the wrong time or the wrong food or something like that. So I've already been thinking about that.
Hmm.
So the short answer is yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. That's really vulnerable. And that's exactly it, right? The rationale of, well, I just ate a couple hours before and I'm asking for food again. What I loved about what you just did is you explored it. Whereas most of us will just get the craving and just satisfy the craving, right? Without actually thinking about it. So exploring, okay, well, what triggered it? Why is it that I want to eat? Is it because someone else is eating and I want to eat something? And that's what triggered it? Is it because I'm bored? Is it because I've got this task to do and I don't really feel like doing it? So I'm distracting myself from it, right? So there's many, many reasons. And to really get to what's driving that, it just takes a bit of curiosity without being judgmental around why you're eating again, which is, again, what we adopt from diet culture is feeling so guilty and shameful, like we're always doing something wrong if we're not following the plan. But when we are making peace with food, really getting more in tune with our body, we learn to listen more.
Let me ask you this. So last time we talked, you talked about, going through that awkward period where, going to eat with people was stressful.
Hmm.
Relating that to the social side of eating, where a lot of times we'll just eat because we're with people. We're out,
Hmm.
you're out at a bar and, you got to have those wings and fries. And then they order more and you just keep eating and stuff. Um, how do you separate out that social aspect or how do you balance it, I guess, with the other side of doing everything in secret, not wanting to go hang out with people because, well, I can't stay on my diet if I go
Right.
there, so I got to do it at home and, where nobody knows what I'm doing, and then that fear, guilt, shame all comes in. Um, how do you start to balance people there? And I'm using this to kind of get into what you're doing now to help people. But let me ask you, if I came to you with that in mind, I'm a social leader, but I'm trying to do stuff in private. How do I balance that?
Right. The first thing I'd ask you, Marv, is do you feel like this is a problem?
Well, of course, I brought it up to you.
Right. And this is important because when we're looking at, okay, this is something I want to change, right? What we're actually doing is we're making a decision. And I'm going to just compare this right now to drinking, for example,
Okay.
right? Drinking doesn't necessarily have to be a problem for a person until they've recognized that it's a problem, right? Like, I got to do something about this. If someone is drinking socially and they're okay with that, they don't mind the consequences, it's not important enough to address, then they can still continue to do those habits. So the same thing with food. If, going out and having wings and fries, like, if that's something you want to do, you don't want to make a change, you absolutely don't have to. So our conversation isn't about having to make a change. But if you have addressed it, like you just said, you shared this with me, meaning this is clearly meaningful, it's important for you to do something about it, then what we're going to do, number one, is make a decision. Like, we have to make a decision. Because without a decision, then what I actually leave myself to doing is whatever anyone else is doing. So I got to decide, like, this is not serving me. I don't want to continue like this. And I want to make changes. Number one. Number two, what I noticed, what you shared, and actually this is very common with most of us, is that socializing is very much related to food, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm going to go out with these friends. That means we're going to go eat. Or when I go hang out with these people, eat. Or date night, we're going to go eat, right? But who says it has to be related to food? There are many ways to hang out with your friends and to socialize without it necessarily revolving around food, right? So that's another thing to really start to look at. Well, what else can I do with this group of people? Again, coming back to the drinking example. When I hang out with these friends, all we do is drink. But is there something else that we can do? Can we not go hang out in a bar? Can we go for a hike? Can we go bowling? Can we go do something else that is not food related, right? Or alcohol related? So that's the other thing too, because your social environment is either going to support you or going to sabotage you. And now you have to choose. But that really, really, really starts with you making that decision. Like, I need to make a change. I want to make a change. Therefore, I need to have a supportive environment. My supportive environment, well, I don't want to give up my friends. So instead of giving up my friends, I'm going to suggest other things that we can do socially. And then finally, this is something that we don't do. We don't tell people what our goal is and actually ask for support. We just keep it to ourselves. We go about it alone. We try to figure it out on our own. And that's where actually we run into a lot of issues. But if we tell our spouse, hey, I want to stop doing this thing, I really need your support, and here's how you can help me do that. Or, hey, friends, the group of friends, like, listen, I'm really thinking of stopping this thing. I really need your support. Can you help me with that? And it's quite amazing because people want to help you.
Uh,
But
really?
well, yes.
Because my
If you have
first thought is,
yeah.
if it's about, well, we'll use the drinking example because that's easiest. Because if now I don't have this problem, so I'm projecting.
Okay.
If I were with a group of friends that all we did was go out and drink, and I didn't want to do that, and I say, okay, hey, can we do something else? And here's why, and try to tell them, and they're like, dude, that's no fun. I'm like, all right, we'll see you. I'm gone. I'm not even gonna worry about those friends and stuff. It's hard to do that when it comes to something like food, or is it?
again, I'm going to come back to that point because actually you brought up something really, really powerful and important.
Okay.
Our friends who love us will support us, right? And so if I am going to share with a group of friends, hey, I want to do this thing and I need your support, and their answer is no, or like, you're not one of us anymore, I think that already tells me a lot about the quality of that friendship. And the same thing with food. The exact same thing applies with food. Hey, I need your support in helping me with this thing because I have a health issue or because I have a really big goal. I mean, clearly we have very important reasons when something is no longer serving us. And so, yes, actually our group of friends who want the best for us would support us. And I feel like I absolutely agree with what you said earlier. Like if I shared that and I'm not getting the support, yeah, it is Sia, right? Because then the question is, well, what do we have in common? Is it this habit that's not serving us? Is that the only thing that we have in common? And if I'm no longer doing that, then that means we don't actually have a connection. Outside of that, I think it's a great place to explore your relationships.
Okay. Sorry I cut you off there, but that was just because I had
No,
the
good.
two
Good.
thoughts. That was one
Yeah.
thought. The other thought that reinforces what you're saying is I have some friends that are going, well, they they're either celiac, full blown,
Mhm.
or celiac averse, where, they do have issues and need to be gluten free. And one of them, the family, has literally adopted gluten free living with that
Right.
person so
Right.
that they can just, hey, this is not your issue. This is our issue.
Beautiful.
So I just want to say I can be on the other side too. I have that.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, what an
Yeah.
amazing thing to do. This is exactly it. Like this is such a supportive environment.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Okay. Um, did I cut you off on a point that you were trying to make with
No.
the supportive friends or
No,
not supportive friends?
I love this because it's such a sensitive topic, especially around habit change. And I know we're talking about nourishment and food, but if you think about any other habit that isn't serving you, whether it's around money, spending behavior, so not just eating behavior, but your spending behavior, anything else that's really sabotaging a vision that you have or something that you're trying to achieve, I feel like that is the time where your true friendships will be revealed depending on the support that you will get. And sometimes it's time to make new connections, new relationships with people who will support that, who are also maybe trying to achieve the thing that you're trying to achieve. And that will help you create that supportive environment.
All right. So folks, let me do this and make sure I refer you back to uh, what we referenced in the last show, the Make Peace with Food podcast. That's a place where you can get some of this information for free. She's not going to give everything away. And she does provide coaching for people that want to have help with their goals. So, Sherry, tell us how coaching is different than just listening to a podcast or finding a meal plan or things like that. What types of things can you help people with?
So coaching, I find it is a way for someone to help you see your blind spots. And we have this tendency to, I know what to do. I know I'm like this. I know I'm like that. And really stick to the same things that we've been doing over and over again. Whereas the role of a coach is not just to support you and to encourage you, but it's also to challenge you and to challenge you to see different aspects, different angles, different ways of doing this, and really pulling out sometimes the things that we have been avoiding and we're actually not even ready to address.
Hmm. All right. So I'm going to have a link to that as well. You also have a bunch of free stuff that you let people have. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And I do believe information there, information should be accessible, right?
Yeah.
And the coaching is how you bridge that gap between what you know and what you'll do with that information.
Tell us about the book, Calm the Craving.
So this is a hormonally structured and rooted book. So in our last conversation, we talked about cortisol, we talked about insulin, and we also talked about the hunger and satiety hormones, ghrelin and leptin. And so Calm the Cravings is really a way for you to learn how these hormones work in your body and for you to focus on balancing the hormones versus trying to balance your plate and balance your calories and macros and overcome cravings. Because what would happen if you overcome came cravings that are driving you to eat at night or to go for that second plate, even though you're full? So instead of focusing on food, we focus on cravings. When the cravings disappear, your body naturally will release any weight it's been holding on to for protection.
Nice. So now I think we've pretty much shared your whole life history here, from startup to, to now. Um, as you're going through this, you've also obviously had some of your own stuff you've gone through, uh, that you are able to share. What keeps you personally motivated to stay on this path?
This constant need for growth, this constant need for contribution and curiosity, really just curious to see what else is possible. And I think what really keeps me on this path is never saying I know it all. I avoid calling myself a master of anything or an expert at anything because I like to see that there's always room for growth, room to learn. And when we say I know it all or I've already done that, even if we've done thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of it, it blocks that curiosity and that desire to want to continue to learn. And in life, we're either growing or dying, Marv. Like that's it.
Mm.
So if we constantly have this drive and this thirst to learn, it comes from being curious and not ever feeling like you've gotten to the point where there's nothing else to learn.
Are you still doing any of the CrossFit stuff?
I do for
Yeah.
myself. I do strength training. I CrossFit. And like really I've moved away from like labels of, of ways to eat or types of, exercise that I do. I just kind of do all of it
Yeah.
and just listen to what my body needs.
So then what would a perfect day look like?
Every day is a perfect day because I wake up able to breathe and see, and I'm pain free, and I can do all the things that I love. Today was a great day because I got to do my yoga class. So um I do yoga, I do strength training. Yesterday I had a strength training day. So yeah, perfect day is one where I wake up with all my faculties and I get to move my body. I get to have these awesome conversations with really cool people like you, Marv. And that's what made it a perfect day.
Okay. And I'm going to bring this full circle now. You mentioned that you're waking up pain free.
Hmm.
So, in all those years after your accident that you were still in pain, um, do you have back pain ever now? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I do sometimes. And I think what's really changed is my identity. And that's what really has also transformed the pain for me. So before I got into the health and fitness space, which we spoke about in our last conversation, I always viewed myself as the person with the bad back. I have a bad back. I have a back condition. Because of my back, I'm going to need to lie down somewhere. So if I go to someone's house, is there a place for me to lie down? Or because of my back, I can't sit in this chair. Or because of my back, I can't sit in this car. So my life, my identity was a person who has a back problem. Whereas now I don't view myself that way anymore. I'm an athlete. An athlete, by the way, my definition is not a person who is getting professionally paid to use their body in that way, being an athlete is a mindset. So eating to nourish my body, to refuel, to recover, to prepare for my next training session, and going to bed early and getting enough rest so that I can give that recovery to my body and prepare myself for the next day, and moving my body because I'm so curious in what it can do and I want to push myself and just see how I perform. And so I know this is moving away a little bit from your question, but I hope it starts to make sense that it really is about identity. And if I was still in that old mindset of I am a person who's had 2 back surgeries and almost paralyzed and I got back problems, I don't think I would be doing most of the things that I am doing now. I'd likely still be listening to what the doctors were telling me. I'd be so fearful of trying things because the thought of it hurting my back or harming my back would always be top of mind. So I think that's really important. And especially, I know we've been talking about making peace with food. If we always see ourselves as that person who's struggling with food, the person who's struggling with weight, the person who's struggling with XYZ, then that's what our life will be focused around, just that struggle versus deciding. And it's really a decision, an instant decision. You don't have to wait for your body to change or for things to change for you to be that person. You can decide to be that person now and start to act, think, behave, speak, and then slowly set up your life to support that identity. So, sure, I still get back pain here and there, but I don't make it a central part of my life. I really learn to be flexible and adaptable around it. And I know, like, almost everybody suffers with their back here and there every now and then. So it's not this thing that is just specific to me and my condition. It's something that all of us experience in terms of suffering.
All right. Well, Sherry, again, thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for splitting this into 2 parts and indulging my questions.
Thank you, Marv. I've really loved our conversation. I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me.
All right. And I'm going to have links to all of your information there. We talked about the Make Peace with Food podcast. There's also another website, Transform, which will send a link that you can reach out to Sherry about coaching, and you can get the free books. There's actually multiple free books on there. We only talked about the one.
Hmm.
And Get Fit with, oh, HIIT deck apps. Okay. We're not going to talk about
I
that.
do have an app. Yes, I have a training app as
You
well.
just made me delete my app.
But this is a training one.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm not doing that. So, Sherry, thank you much. And we'll talk again soon.
love that. Thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for this episode of the Unhealthy Podcast. And I hope that this conversation gave you a different way to think about your health. And obviously, diet is not a set of rules that you're constantly breaking, but a relationship with your body, mind, and nervous system. So, huge thank you to Sherry for sharing her story. And if you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a rating, review, share this with somebody who needs it, and keep taking care of your life one step, one conversation, one day at a time. Thanks for listening. And as always, live healthy and be happy.